All right, I'd like to call to order the Farragut Board of Zoning Appeals for Wednesday, July 25, 2018 at 7 p.m. Chair recognizes that by our clock, we're a little after 7 p.m., and so appears we have two items on the agenda for this evening. The first matter is the approval of minutes for the June 27, 2018 meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those minutes?
Yes. Any changes? Bart?
No, sir.
None. A motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Second on the item on the agenda is a public hearing on a request for a special exception to determine the number of required parking spaces for a mini warehouse development proposed at 11775 Snyder Road, 6 acres, Zone C2, Knoxville Farragut Storage LLC applicant. Do we have someone from the applicant present? All right. And if we can, if everyone that's going to give testimony would go ahead and stand, and I'll swear you all in at the same time. All right. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll be presenting to this board is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. All right. Then, as is customary, we'll go ahead and hear from the town's official at this point in time.
Okay. This is a request to deal with parking standards for a mini storage facility that's going in at the corner of Snyder Road golf site. It's a fairly large facility. It includes 3 buildings, and your more traditional looking self-storage facility, and the larger building in the center is a 3-story. It'll be climate controlled facility. Under the town's parking standards, mini storage or self-storage uses are not listed as a use with a specific parking ratio next to it. And so under your ordinance in those circumstances, the Board of Zoning Appeals is directed to make a determination as to whether or not the parking being proposed is adequate and to set the parking standard for that type of use. This is sort of a 2-part request. One deals with the vehicular parking, and the other half deals with the bicycle parking. So from the standpoint of the vehicular parking, they're proposing 6 parking spaces for the use. It includes 2 standard parking spaces, 3 parallel spaces, and 1 handicapped. They're putting in about an 84,000 square foot facility. But again, with it being mini storage or self-storage, a lot of the parking needs will actually be handled when people are at their unit, loading and unloading and that sort of thing. So they really have a small office in the corner of the building, and it'll be for the employee of the office and I guess people coming in to lease and that sort of thing. And there is someone here from the applicant that can explain what they see at similar facilities and why they think this amount of parking is adequate. From staff's perspective, we think it's probably adequate for this use given the nature of it. On the vehicular side, on the bicycle side, it's a little different, and I don't know if you want to deal with the vehicular part of the question first and then go on to bicycle, or just do the whole thing on the front end. It's up to y'all as to.
Well, it would appear to be one. Well, it says there's item 3. Did I misread the minutes?
Well, it's all under one item, but their request dealt with both the vehicular parking, which I think is fairly clear in the ordinance, and from staff's perspective, the ordinance specifically directs that for uses not specifically mentioned herein, off-street parking requirements shall be determined by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And so again, on the vehicular side, it's really clearly within the purview of the board to set the parking standard for this use and for this particular site. Whereas on the bicycle side, staff doesn't see the same same flexibility in the language. We don't really, and the parking rate is just a flat rate of one bicycle from a staff perspective that that the board has the same special exception. So in that case, we're
Is on the agenda, I have 2 items, and we're on the second item. In the documents I've been provided that follow the agenda, I appear to have 3 items. And that makes me wonder what actually the applicant filed, and I'm not seeing that I have a copy of that.
well, the agenda I had just had the 2, so maybe
Just
it
the
was
2.
revised. Sorry about that if you got something earlier. But we felt that the one for the bicycle was, just wasn't appropriate, and
This is minutes.
That's your second page of the
That's,
map.
that's our minutes from the last meeting.
So they're just out of order.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's only one sheet.
All right.
Two
Let me
sheets.
move those aside. Then I take that back, and I'm still looking for the applicant's application or documents filed. Do you have a copy of that?
I've got those. I really filed 2 because they weren't quite sure, how.
So there are 2 items.
Well, we pulled this one because
I don't think we've got the authority to deal with the bicycle thing.
so this is the one they're applying out there.
Okay.
Strictly parking.
All right.
Okay. I've got a question on that. If I'm looking at the print here of the drawing, and I see 3 parking spots, and you said there is 6?
There are a couple of spots that are parallel spots, and I guess the applicant can point those out as to where they were.
Okay, there are 3 across from it that are parallel
Yeah, yes, sir.
instead of, okay, because I did not see a curb, a stop. Don't we require curb stops when there is a curb?
Typically not for parallel spots.
Okay, okay.
Please, thank you.
It'd be tough to do that on the middle one. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to distract us, but in looking at Exhibit A, Section 3, vehicular parking, do I understand correctly that the town's position is that there is authorization in the ordinance for a modification given these circumstances?
Yes, under the second paragraph there in the exhibit, specifically under vehicular parking, it spells out that, the parking follows except down the last. I've got the full parking standards if you want to see them here, but after that paragraph, it goes on to list specific land uses and what parking is required for those land uses. And so for any use that's not specifically listed, it's up to the Board of Zoning Appeals to make the determination as to what is, the proper number of parking for that use.
And so if you were to enumerate those uses, this particular use as a storage facility is not one of the enumerated uses?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, so it would be really up to the Board of Zoning Appeals to use its discretion, given the intent of the ordinance, to decide whether or not this is appropriate, given these circumstances.
Well, I've looked at some of the other storage, climate control storage facilities, the one out off the, down toward North Shore, and then there's also one over on Middlebrook. And they do not seem to have very much parking as far as there at the same time. I've went by one of them quite often and every day, and I've not seen any, well, like one car just about every time that I'm there, so, or that when I've drove by there, so. One off Pellissippi, it's kind of hard to tell, but the one there on Middlebrook, it's right by the road, so.
And also, this is a large company that, does these elsewhere in the country, and so they have a good sense of the amount of parking they need for the facility. I didn't, from from staff's perspective, we don't believe that they would be under parking themselves. They probably have a good sense, and the parking plan that they've proposed is based on what they've typically seen at other facilities. And we did check some parking generation, things that are put out by ITE and some other sources, and they're in the ballpark. So,
Okay, one other thing is, I guess really if those spaces would be more for the climate control section, that the single-story ones would be something that they pull up to load and unload?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's all fenced in. There's a security fence, kind of basically where the, do I need to go to the podium?
Yeah, if we can do this. Does anyone have any more questions for the town's official at this point? No. All right, then if you would please, if you would take the podium and if you would state your name and your address, and so to identify yourself, please.
My name's Carter McCall, and I guess my address is 10330 Hardin Valley Road.
All right, and you've been previously sworn in, so you're free to answer his question at this
You
point.
state the name of your company, please.
Fulgham McIndoe and Associates.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell from looking at the projector, but basically where there's exterior units along the first floor of the central building. And so basically where those exterior units begin, there's a security fence all the way around to the other side where then you would, I guess, exit kind of where the dumpster is. So I guess the idea would be that people that are using those single-story buildings, they would just pull up right to their unit and load or unload and be gone.
I'm going to advance. Well, no, there wasn't another one. I do have the full set of plans if you'd like to see what the building looks like, so you can get a sense. Even on the climate control unit, there are storage bays that basically go around the building, and there'll probably be people parking there as well. So if you'd like to see the larger set of plans, or if you want to show it to them, I brought them here if you want to.
Okay.
Yeah, pass this on down here because I've got this from the planning commission meeting, so
I've got that.
it kind of shows the ground, the doors on the bottom row, bottom floor there. Okay.
And the other units are accessed from the inside, interior? Is
The
that
other
correct?
floors.
Yeah.
There's internal and external access units in every building. So where kind of the drive aisle runs along those buildings, there will be units along there, but then there's also a door that they can go inside and access internal units as well.
It shows them right across through here. So
Yeah, with the little
little notches.
notches.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a larger version.
Know what I've got here.
Okay.
And this one doesn't show the security fence, but essentially it would start, kind of right here before this first unit.
So where's the parallel parking on there? Sorry.
It'd be right here.
Oh, I see, okay.
Sure.
This is the entrance to the office, which would be kind of in the bottom right corner
Okay.
on the drawing that Bart's got up there.
Okay.
So it'd just be directly across from that.
Okay.
Hey, Jen, it's right in here.
Thank you. I do have a question, if you'll take the podium again. So generally speaking, what I'm going to call these modern storage facilities typically utilize very few personnel. How much room is there, or how many personnel are anticipated to be at this facility at any given time?
It's my understanding that there would just be one staff person there at a time.
Are most of these things mechanized or computerized such that you can rent the storage space ahead of time or do a lot of your preliminary work? Or is it like, I'll call it the old-fashioned days where you have to show up and go and be showed a facility and then you sign some paperwork there and have a key, or a little bit of both?
That's a good question. In terms of like initial setup and leasing, I don't know if that has to be done in person, but they will have I guess there would be a way for you to get in at any time. There's probably a key card or a code or something that you would get when you rent one of the units.
Now, you guys are just a civil. You're not actually the ones that make these decisions that he's asking, right?
Correct.
By a business to design it in this fashion for more parking than this at their other facilities. It's not anticipated that you'd have a lot of people showing up at the same time, needing to come to see one person in an office, and that the storage facility, people tend to meander in and out at odd intervals and not at the same time.
That's correct. And I guess one thing I could mention as well is Knox County doesn't have parking regulations for self-service storage either, but the city of Knoxville does. And what we've basically gone by their ordinance, which says you have one space per employee at any given time, and then I think it's 3 customer spaces or 4. I can't remember. It may be listed on the drawing.
And we have one handicap, right?
And then, yeah, one. Are these just the architectural?
I've got the full site plan here too, if you want it.
It looks like it's written on there, I just can't read that tiny.
Yeah, it's pretty tiny.
Yeah, so it'd be 3 customer spaces, 1 employee space, and then 1 handicap.
Total of 5 then. In addition to the dedicated spaces, am I correct in understanding that if somehow those mystically became full parking around the rest of the storage spaces that anyone could park in at any
Right.
given time?
Yeah, we kept the drive aisles fairly large from doing turning analysis on larger, moving trucks and stuff that people would be bringing into this site, which, that creates more space for quote-unquote overflow parking if necessary.
That was one of the big reasons of moving your entrance to the west, wasn't it?
That's correct.
Okay. Because the current entrance was more toward the east, closer to the corner, when it's there now,
Correct.
which is the curb cut, yeah.
So if I understand correctly, this would comply with the city of Knoxville's current requirements for a storage facility such as this.
That's correct.
All right, and we don't have a similar ordinance in Knox County or the town of Farragut, so it's up to our discretion to determine whether this is sort of reasonable given what the use of this property will be.
Right.
I do have a question for the town. So let's assume that we found this to be a reasonable use. Can we condition it upon the use remaining for this storage facility?
Yeah, I think absolutely. The BZA can place conditions on any of its decisions. So
It's a good thought.
And actually, if there was an expansion to the use, you could, even condition it on this use and the size of this use. And that way, if they expanded, they'd have to come back and reevaluate.
All right, does anyone have any further questions of the applicant or of the town's official?
No, sir.
No.
Do I have any motions?
Ooh, that's a hard one to read. I guess a motion to approve the 6 parking spaces for 11775 Snyder Road.
Did I hear you say 5 earlier instead of 6?
He's,
We had to count at 6, so.
It's actually 6.
Okay, I thought you said 5. I'm
required
sorry.
Following the city of Knoxville's requirements, it would be 5, but they, our client asked us for 6.
Very good.
So,
So you have one for the employee, and then one of the handicap, and then 4 other open spots.
correct.
Okay, that's how I see it here on the drawing.
Okay.
Okay, Bart, you need any more than that for a,
Making all those
Unless you want to
conditions.
condition it at the way you were I'm questioning.
okay,
Essentially condition it on for this particular site at its current size.
yeah, based on current site drawing. Yeah.
Just point of clarity. If I second it, then we can talk about it?
Yeah.
I second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any discussion?
Thank you. I'm trying to learn my orders here. So I just want to clarify, Ron, so when you say the site, based on conditioning on the site map, are you confirming that it will be conditioned based on the current use and the current square footage of the building?
Well, we could do it either way.
Or both?
Both.
Or both, yeah. Both would be better, yeah.
All right. Are you amending your motion?
Yes.
All right.
Motion to amend.
So amended. And do I have a second?
Second?
All right. Any further discussion?
No.
All right. Then I'd call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. So that was the vehicular side of the equation. The second half of their request dealt with their plans for bicycle parking.
All right. I heard Mr. Williams saying that might not be officially before.
They had turned in 2 applications because they had originally thought they might apply for a variance for the bicycle parking, and we didn't think that, that was really appropriate. And so we wanted to put it under the special exception, but at the same time, we don't really think that the ordinance is set up for you to have that degree of flexibility on the bicycle side. So our deny that and have them go for a text amendment.
I guess my concern is, as the public agenda reads, we only have 2 items, and the second item only addresses the number of required parking spaces.
Yeah, I think when Mark put the agenda together, he merged the parking in sort of in a generic sense for both vehicular and bicycle.
Okay. And you did have another piece of paper. Can you show me that other piece of
Yeah.
paper again? The other application. Thank you. Well, and as I'm looking at this second application, I guess my concern is that it appears to be 2 applications. We've ruled on the first one with regard to parking fee of $100 for each of them. Did they do that?
Yeah, they did, and our intention is to either refund that $100 fee for the second one, because it wasn't even filled out with respect to what they were requesting, because we weren't quite sure how to categorize it, whether it would be a variance or a special exception request. And when we discussed that at the staff level, we felt that we'll either refund the fee, or if they want to pursue the text amendment option, then we'll credit that that fee towards the text amendment.
All right. And let me, if I could read the second one, and I want to share it with my colleagues here, but what's written is referring to staff and BZA to interpret the code as it relates to the proposed use of the property with regards to bicycle parking.
Yeah.
So that I want to share with everyone. Interprets the code. I mean, we either have an application that, and sometimes we have applications that we determine we lack authority to rule on.
Yeah.
That's the parking space, though. Yeah.
And I believe that's essentially why they were merged, in that it wasn't an interpretation of a staff or a town decision, and in terms of the way the regulations are written now, you may not agree with staff's interpretation of the regulations with respect to the bicycle parking, and you may feel that you have the authority to rule on the bicycle side. So if you want to go over our thinking on that, I'll be happy to go through that based on the way the ordinance is written right now.
I mean, one of my concerns is that item that is in the form of an application to the Board of Zoning Appeals before the board on the agenda. And to the extent we've ruled on the second item, merged and the town synopsis is merged, but from my perspective, it looks like two separate applications. They've been charged a fee for two separate applications, and I'm concerned about addressing something that's not technically on the agenda, and that we're sort of, as the question is being posed, I'm concerned that we lack authority to interpret just some sort of ordinance, really. So, I mean, the first issue I have is determining whether there's something actually before the board that we have to decide. Hear the discussion on that.
Well, if I read this correctly, it says it's based on cumulative total square footage of 3 buildings, and it says it would need to be 17 bicycle parking spaces. They're proposing 4.
Mr. Williams, did you see that that's?
So
okay.
Bart, are you saying that as you listed item number 2, you just say parking, bicycle parking in one agenda item?
Exhibit A, part 3 deals with the number of parking spaces, and it deals with both bicycle parking and vehicular parking. They were merged. However, so I think that's why they were put under the same special exception type application.
So in the bicycle parking, where it's technically required to have 17 spaces for a mini warehouse, they're asking for just 4. So would that be a variance or a special exception?
Well, on something like that, and really it was more of an interpretation, and so it's under the special exception, but because there are 2 different types of parking and there's 2 different paragraphs in there, it is why I'm sort of approaching it from a part A and part B to their question. So the first part was vehicular parking, which is covered in the second paragraph there under attachment A. And it clearly makes it to where for vehicular parking in that last sentence, for any use not enumerated in the rest of the parking section of the ordinance, the Board of Zoning Appeals has to make that determination. But from on the bicycle side of the equation, from staff's perspective, it's fairly clear there that for any use other than single family or 2 family, it's a flat one parking space per 5,000 square feet. So the language is not the same in those 2 paragraphs.
As you were saying.
Yeah.
So do we have the authority to reduce the bicycle parking?
From staff's perspective, we don't think you do, which is why we're recommending that the applicants pursue a text amendment. And special exception has to be specifically in the ordinance for the board to be able to rule on that. And there's not similar language in the first paragraph dealing with bicycle parking as there is in the second paragraph dealing with vehicular parking.
Well, I mean, if you're going to allow grouping it in as parking, the word parking spaces, then I think I must have to disagree.
You are free to.
It don't specifically call out a mini warehouse as the application, in the ordinance. It's parking in general. If we're giving relief on the amount of parking spots that we have for cars, I don't see how we could not do the same for bicycles.
I agree. And also, just looking at Exhibit A, item number 3, it's titled parking spaces. And then it goes, and to your point, it differentiates between bicycle parking and vehicle parking. But I'm assuming because title of item number 3 has parking spaces, I'm assuming that's why Mark probably combined everything on the agenda. But
Yeah. Although the guidance, again, from staff's perspective, I think is one deals specifically with bicycle parking, and then the other goes on to deal with vehicular. And it might help you if you want to look at the entire zoning section. It might provide some clarity because what goes on after that second sentence in vehicular starts to spell out all the uses, and it's in the first paragraph. And again, on the bicycle side, it lists 2 uses that it doesn't apply to, which is 1 per 5,000, which, so that's sort of the difference. So if you'd like to look at this, it may make a little more
I
sense.
get your point. So
Yeah, I'd like to look at it.
And then while you're coming up, so if a text amendment was granted, would it be to change the language of the first paragraph titled bicycle parking to allow the board of zoning appeals to address that like the second paragraph?
Yeah,
Okay.
if the applicants wanted to pursue that, they would amendment, and then staff would draft language to,
Okay.
to provide some flexibility. But basically, 3 starts here. It deals with vehicular, and then it starts listing all the particular uses and the parking ratios. So
Okay.
that may make it a little clearer for you all.
Sure. Thank you.
I'll pass that down. So if I understand then, it's staff's position that the last sentence in the second paragraph that starts vehicular parking, period, in Exhibit A. So for uses not specifically mentioned herein, off-street parking requirements shall be determined by the Board of Zoning Appeals is directly related to vehicular parking because of its inclusion in that second paragraph, and is not directly related to bicycle parking because it is not included in that first paragraph.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for clarifying, Keith. That helps. Thank you.
And then again, what follows the second paragraph and the sort of enumeration of uses and parking requirements for vehicular parking.
Again, for the record, I'm somewhat concerned that we've already ruled on the second item agenda, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, but it sounds like if we are going to consider this, that we have to do so with the understanding that the second item agenda was in 2 parts, and we have only ruled on the first of 2 parts with regard to vehicular parking if we decide to proceed with this.
Sure.
I mean, in the future, and again, it's my preference, but it may not be anyone else's. Just for clarity, we often have issues that are multiple in number that require multiple applications where a fee is charged. And any time, from my thinking, that a fee is charged and a separate application is filed, I think it really should be a separate agenda item.
Sure.
Because I think it's confusing when we have another application that's somehow merged, not because of merging in the document, it's a separate document, but merged because the staff thought it was sort of similar. I mean, there's a lot of things that are sort of similar that come before us, but to me, if there's a separate application with a separate filing fee, I think it needs to be a separate agenda item.
I would agree.
For clarity, because if you went to look this up, it would be fine if the 4 of us, or the 5 of us, were involved, or sitting there to say, oh, this is what we done. But any other way, it's...
Yeah.
I think my concern is that we have an applicant who's paid money to be heard, and staff decided that they're not going to be heard on this topic. Is what it appears to me.
Well, I mean, they're being heard because the second one dealt with the bicycle side of things. It felt that it all fell within parking and a special exception on the parking side of things, but there's two parts to that question. And, at the time that, they were filling out the applications, we weren't exactly sure what to tell them to ask for, because we had to sit and do the research as to how it fell in. So they essentially filed one application as a placeholder.
I guess, I think this board probably has the power to continue something, and I would feel more comfortable if we continued this item, which does not, to me, appear to actually be on the agenda, so that we can give the public notice of it, and if they want to reframe it, withdraw the application, file a new application, they could certainly do that, and then we could properly consider it in a public hearing.
Okay.
That would really be my preference, but again, I haven't moved to do that, but if there's a motion to do so, and if we found that in favor, that would be something that would seem appropriate to me. I don't want to pull the applicant back in a second time for no reason, but I want it to be a public hearing on the agenda with the actual item before us, so we know exactly what it is we're supposed to be doing.
I suppose the applicants could withdraw now and then pursue the text amendment if they wanted to.
That's two options.
Yeah.
That's two options.
I guess the issue is, though, that the public doesn't even know what we're referring to because it's not publicly announced on the agenda. It's not, at least to me, it's not clear.
So
So I think my suggestion, I don't know if I make a motion, but I'm going to ask staff going forward that each application is duly represented, even if it's, item 2, part A, vehicle parking, and then part B, bicycle parking, because there are two applications in front of us. I appreciate the confusion because it's confusing us, obviously. And so I understand that, and I know we're trying to make it go as smooth as possible moving forward, because it appears to me that it's not been publicly announced on an agenda. But that's just my perspective.
They pursue a text amendment, then that is made public, so,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that solves.
or it could come back to us the second time.
Sure.
So to me, that's the two choices.
Okay.
I think a text amendment would probably be a little bit quicker for them. Would that be correct?
Well, no.
But it needs to be resolved no matter
yeah,
what anyways.
Yeah, because a text amendment will have to go to the planning commission.
Okay.
It'll have to be drawn up, it'll have to go to the planning commission, it'll have to be recommended then as an ordinance amendment to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, and then they'll have to go through two readings, so.
It would be quicker to go through us then. Because it could be
Yeah.
put on next month's agenda.
But overall, the text needs to be amended to clarify.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, we
it
think
could
so.
be done at the same time, whichever's quicker for him can be done as well.
I think an appropriate motion, and I'm not making it, but an appropriate motion might be that we have concluded all of the items on the agenda, and we could move to adjourn, seeing no further items on the agenda. And then the town could certainly schedule this on the agenda for next month. I don't think we can, I have difficulty continuing something that's not particularly before the
Agree.
board. And so if we don't have any other items on the agenda, we could move to adjourn, there being nothing else on the agenda, adjourn, and then you could work with the applicant to put it on another hearing at a different time if you wanted to,
Yeah.
depending on how they choose to go forward.
Yeah, whether it be a text amendment or which means you're right, planning commission once, and then board, mayor and alderman twice.
Sure.
So that would be 3 readings. What's the time on getting it on the planning commission meeting? Is it already passed?
It's something we could take to the planning commission on, pretty quick order, although, I mean, I think the applicant should pursue that because, staff's recommendation isn't going to, change regarding the, the language that's in the ordinance now regarding the bicycles. We think it's fairly clear that it's a flat rate of 1 per 5,000 for any use other than single family and two family housing. So, I realize you don't want to rule on that right now and your feeling on that, but so I think the reality is the text amendment is the best route for the applicants to take moving forward so that it can get clarified.
Okay, well, I guess that's between you guys then. We kind of,
So
I
I'd
think
like
we're
to,
out of it.
I'd like to make a motion that we've discussed all the items on the agenda this evening, and I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?